Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and this is my channel, Habitual Travel. I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I've been really examining les filles du roi and getting to know each and every one of their stories. This is episode 216 out of 700, so you do the math. Come a long way to go. We're going to explore her life in a minute. But before we begin, let me show you ways you can help the channel grow. First, you can subscribe, notify, and like the video. All of that helps my logarithms. And if you are so inclined, we also have ways to make the channel itself grow financially. We have Patreon and we have the coffee platforms that I've put the links to. And we also have a one-time payment on PayPal if you are so inclined. So thank you for all of you who have supported me thus far. I really, really appreciate it. And I also want to do a shout out to Shelby, who is one of my patrons and also was able to gift me with these amazing illustrations that she's done. So thank you, Shelby, for adding to the stories I'm telling. I appreciate you so much. So this is episode 216 of her name is Marguerite Vaillant. And guess what? She's one of mine. I didn't even, I had lost track. And then I'm like, oh my, I've got a fille du roi that I forgot to do. All these episodes, and I thought I had done them all. So let's explore Marguerite Vaillant. So Marguerite was born in 1646 in La Rochelle, France. Her parents are unknown. We do know that she was baptized in the Church of Saint Nicolas, which originated in 1145, and it was rebuilt after the Protestant uprising around 1647. So I don't know the status of the church when she was born, but certainly it was either being destroyed or it was being rebuilt, so one of the two. La Rochelle was founded during the 10th century and became an important harbor in the 12th. Until the 15th century, La Rochelle was to be the largest French harbor in the Atlantic coast, dealing mainly in wine, salt, and cheese. Of course, she's my ancestor and comes from there because those are my three favorite things. The name La Rochelle, which means La Roche, if you will, it comes from the Latin meaning little rock. And it has really one of the richest histories of all the towns of France, from its beginnings as where the Knights of Templar had their strongest base. Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet in 1152 here, who then became King of England as Henry II in 1154, thus putting La Rochelle under Plantagenet rule until Louis VIII captured it in the 1224 siege of La Rochelle. During the Plantagenet control of the city, in 1185, Henry II had the Vauclair castle built, remains of which are still visible in the Place de Vaillant. And from 1568, La Rochelle became a center for the Huguenots. So we do not know if she was Protestant. We do not know what her background was, but we do know that this was a central place where there was a great deal of unrest. And it is not surprising that she would have sought refuge in a new world. I also want to point out La Rochelle. A lot of the refugees from La Rochelle would eventually make their way to New York, where they established a colony called New Rochelle. And that is where that comes from. So Marguerite would arrive on the ship La Nouvelle France on July 3rd, 1668. The room that she selected and who selected her, his name, Jean Gagne, and he was born about 1651. We do not know where in France. We assume he was from France, and his parents, unknown. So we do not have any information on him. One of the reasons we don't have any information is we also don't have one of the church records. They were married sometime in 1668. We believe in Batisca. The history of Batisca begins with our old friend Samuel Champlain, who met up with a native named Batisca in 1609, and by 1612 Champlain had named this area Batisquam. In 1636, the seigneury was granted to Jacques Laforest, at which time it was called Madeleine. By 1639, it was divvied up again and given to the Jesuits. Hence, the area did not grow until 1666, when the settlers finally began to arrive. Prior to 1670, the inhabitants met at the home of Lieutenant Nicolas Rivard de Lavigne. In between 1670 and 1674, a wooden chapel was constructed, and by 1684, the parish of Saint François de Xavier de Betska is formed, which is the church there. I toured it this summer. It was just charming. I mean, I felt really like it was home. There was a feeling of it. I mean, I'm not a farmer or anything like that. It was just this feeling of connection that I had when I visited. And what's really neat is that here I have Jean Gagne and Marguerite Vaillant, and they knew another one of my great-grandfathers, Nicolas Rivard de Lavigne. So when you go to one of the places in Quebec where your family really connected, you'll begin to see all the connections. It really does. It really is, that circle that we talk about in genealogy. Very important to have that connection and know exactly the exact place where your family is from. My family is from Betska and Saint-Geneviève de Betska. And I mean, there's other places as well, but that was a nucleus for my ancestry. Once you find your ancestry and where it came, study it, visit it as much as you can. After a while, they would move from Betska to Lotbinière. Lotbinière, as you can see, I've circled it here on this map. René Louis Chartier became the first seigneur in this territory when in 1672 he was granted by the King of France with Jean Talon's assistance. He named the seigneurie after one of his family's old seigneuries in France, Lotbinière. In 1693, the inhabitants built a first church, probably a small chapel, at a place called the Domain. It was during the construction of this building that the bishop de Saint-Vallier, impressed by the faith and courage of the settlers, decided to elevate the Lotbinière mission to a parish in 1624. And so you can begin to know that they were pioneers at Betska, and then again at Lotbinière. I've not yet visited that particular place. I can't wait. They would go on to have 6 children. Marianne, their firstborn, would marry Antoine Baudouin and have 2 children, both of whom would make it. This is my direct ancestor. You can see that only 2 descendants, and here I am. Madeleine would marry Guillaume Guyot and have 4 children, 3 of whom would make it. She would then marry Louis Dufour and have 2 children, both of whom would make it. I must note that she had her last child at age 46. Amazing. Then we have no more information about. Françoise would go on to marry Jacques Daigneau and have 6 children, 5 of whom would make it. Marie Marguerite would marry André Robert and have 6 children, 5 of whom would make it. And Marie Madeleine we have no more information on. This is the 1681 census. We have Jean Daigneau, Marguerite Vaillant, and you can see she's older than he is. Marie, or at least in the assessment. We have Marie, Madeleine, Jean, François, Marguerite. They have 1 gun, 7 goats, and 7 arpents, about 5 to 6 acres of land. Marguerite would be the first to die. She died at the Hospital Dieu on the 27th of November, 1704. She would be buried at the Hôtel Dieu Cemetery. She and Jean had been married 38 years as of her death. Their descendants would number 63 as of 1729. Jean himself would pass away probably about a year later. We're not sure of the date. There's no record, but we assume that sometime around 1705 is when he would also pass. So here are some of my favorite resources. Let's talk about WikiTree. Those of you who have not experienced WikiTree, let me tell you, it's amazing. I contribute my tree to it. I wish I had more time, trust me. They source everything. You will be able to really get some incredible information on there. So I would encourage you to set up an account. It's free. Everything's free. And start looking for information and start contributing. I think you're going to be amazed by that particular resource. And all of the resources will help you depending on what you're needing at the time. So ends episode 216. It was really thrilling for me to really kind of work out one section of my tree that I hadn't done. And that's the great thing about genealogy. It continues. It's a never ending. And we all know that. But Marguerite, she lived a fairly long life. Her and Jean were pioneers, not only at Batiscan, but at Lotbinière, and were able to establish their family and really make certain that their descendancy was assured. Because here I am. She only had, like, her daughter only had 2 descendants, and yet somehow it worked out. So 300 years later, here I am. So I am so grateful that she came to our shores. I'm thankful, and I bless her memory. Merci, grand-maman. I'm so thrilled that I was able to actually get to know her a little bit better. I also want to thank all of my subscribers and contributors, the patrons and supporters in particular, for not only their, financial support, but also the letters and the emails and the, way to go girl and all of that. All of my subscribers actually are amazing, and I bless each and every one of you. So whether you're on the board or you're just a regular subscriber, I thank you so much for being there for me and helping me with this project. Thank you so much. Until I see you on episode 217, au revoir.